Good afternoon. We are so excited to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Mary Marwig. I'm a local neighbor. I'm a board member of the Old Irving Park Association and a member of this citizen-led park rededication in Gertrude Kolmar's honor. Today we are unveiling a new park sign which bears Gertrude Kolmar's name. And thank you to the sponsorship from the Old Irving Park Association for a new tree right over there that was planted in her honor as well. Thank you to all of the attendees who tied a memorial ribbon on the fence today, symbolically leaving a piece of yourself as you hopefully take something away from the speakers you hear today. We are especially thankful for our younger attendees, our students from Belding Elementary and our students from Schurz High School. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. The students do have to leave at 2:30 today, so you will see them stand up at that time, but we do want to thank them for coming today. This rededication was made possible by the immense support that we have received from you, our local neighbors, supporters from across the globe, including our special guest, Paul Hojesner from Australia, who you will hear from today. Because of you, we can honor Gertrude Kolmar in this very special way. I would like to take a moment to thank some particularly special folks, the members of the Gertrude Kolmar Rededication Committee, which include Mark Dobritsky, Jacob Kaplan, who is not here, Daniel Korgajelski, and Daniel Egelweiss, who I would like to introduce now to extend our further thank yous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Egelweiss. Our committee would like to say a special thank you to the following individuals and organizations for their support. The many local neighbors and nearby community members and Chicagoans citywide for your support, people from around the world who read our news articles and wrote showing their support to us, including our special guest today, Paul Hojesner, grandnephew of Gertrude Kolmar. A special thank you to reporter Ariel Perella O'Reilly of Block Club Chicago, whose news coverage of our efforts led us to meeting Paul and having him here today. We also thank the many other news outlets who covered our efforts to rededicate the park, including Nadig News, Jenik Zviskovsky, and others for their press coverage. The board and staff members of the Chicago Park District who put so much effort into making this happen. The board and members of the Old Irving Park Association, the Jewish Neighborhood Development Council of Chicago, the Jewish United Fund, Americans of Polish Descent, the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, the Donk House German-American Cultural Center, the Polish Museum of America, educators including Dominic Pachiga, and the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. We'd also like to thank elected officials and dignitaries, including Mayor Lightfoot, my good friend Illinois State Senator Sarah Feigenholtz, Illinois State Senator Cristina Passione-Zayas, Illinois State Representative Jamie Andrade, Chicago Park District General Superintendent and CEO Rosa Escareño and the entire board, and last but certainly not least, a very special thank you to Chicago Park District Board of Commissioners Vice President Modesto Tico Valle. Thank you, thank you, thank you all. It's important to note to the students and residents here and those who will become aware of our efforts. Please know that the members of our committee simply looked out at the city of Chicago and noticed an opportunity to make our community better. Once we recognized the opportunity, all it took was time and persistence with our friends and neighbors to make a positive public difference. I just hope that in Gertrude Kolmar's honor, anyone watching us understands that they can do the same, because that's what this park is all about. With that, I would like to introduce the mayor of the city of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Did everybody suddenly fall asleep when I walked up? Let's try that again. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And let's say a special thanks to the students who are here with us, because this moment has to also be about them. People ask me, Mayor, you got a really tough job. You've been through a lot of hard things. Why in the world do you want to do this? And I say, every single day in this job, there's something that I am gifted with that shows me the best of who we are as Chicagoans. The way in which we come together, block by block, neighbor to neighbor, and make a difference. And this is one of those moments. You heard from the prior speakers that this moment didn't happen because the mayor said it should. This moment didn't happen because the CEO of the Park District said it should. This happened because the people in this community came together and said, this is what we want to do. And our job as public servants is to empower people all over our city, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, to realize the aspirations of what they want to do, the vision that they see for their block, for their neighborhood. And that is precisely why we're here. You did this. You found this incredible story from the Holocaust, which we must continue to remember and make sure that the next generation and the generation of that never forget one of the greatest human tragedies in the history of mankind. But we learn the lessons from that. And we take from those lessons the grace that came. When you look at the story, the life story of Gertrude Kolmar, who even in the face of a great adversity in her home country, when relatives all around her, other family members were leaving, said, I will stay to take care of my father, even understanding at great risk to herself what that would mean. And unfortunately, as we know, the story of her life unfolded. She lost her life in Auschwitz. But what she didn't lose is herself, her personhood, her creativity. She continued to produce her art, the poems, the short stories, the novels, and made sure that that work, her life's work, her blood, sweat, and tears, survived even this horrible tragedy. And it survived and thrived, and now she's known as one of the greatest German poets in history. And the fact that we are honoring her today, capturing it forever and memorializing her history, I think is again a great testament to who we are as a city, honoring our history, because her story is also our story. All the German immigrants that have come to Chicago to call it home over the centuries, we add to that story, that legacy, by honoring her in this park. Now let me make sure that I haven't missed anything important in my prepared remarks, but I just felt so inspired by reading her story. I felt so inspired by seeing these young people who are here, but importantly, make sure I was inspired by this block-driven, neighborhood-driven initiative, which is what we must continue to be about and what we must continue to celebrate. One thing that I know, not having grown up here in Chicago, but been here now for almost 30 plus years, is we've got to reclaim our history. There are so many important stories, so many unsung heroes all across our city, all across the decades. Our kids need to know about that. They need to know why we feel such pride at being Chicagoans. We need to make sure that we are lifting up those stories and reclaiming our narrative and never letting anybody define who we are as Chicagoans. We've got a great story, we've got a great history, and we need to make sure that we tell that. So let me conclude by saying thank you. Thank you to the people who are here. Thank you to the Park Advisory. Thank you to Mary and the list of other organizations that you heard from that made this happen. Ms. Kolmar's legacy lives on through each and every one of you, and hopefully it'll live on through the many people who will come and see this park and hear the story and be inspired by her, but also inspired by the neighbors who made this possible. Let me also thank, I'll call you Paul, because I'm sure I'm going to screw up the pronunciation of your last name. I mean, it's an amazing thing that you've traveled all this long way to make that connection between a woman who was born in 1894, who struggled through her life, lost her life, but didn't lose her humanity, thank you so much for being here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. But once again, thank you to the neighbors. Thank you for honoring and gracing us on this beautiful day. And with that, I'll invite another champion of our neighborhoods, our great CEO and General Superintendent of the Chicago Park District, Rosa Escareño. Rosa.
Wow, I can't top that at all, and I'm not even going to attempt to do so. But I do just want to say thank you. My name is Rosa Escareño. Thank you, Mayor. What a wonderful way to honor Gertrude Kolmar's memory and the reason why we are all here today. I'd just like to, again, acknowledge some of our leaders that are here today, Senator Feigenholtz, also Alderman Gardner, and other officials that are here. But I definitely also want to acknowledge and thank our board of Chicago Park District Board President Maeri Hamilton and our Chicago Park District Vice President Board Commissioner Valle. And the reason why it's important for me to call them out is because when the community came out and said, this is what we want in our parks, we at the Park District have to go through a process and go and work with the board. And I just want to say to Paul, thank you for joining us even before we were able to make this happen and have virtual conversations with us. I think it was early in the morning, I think 3 or 4 in the morning, in order to meet with us and make sure that we were honoring your family in the way that the family really wanted us to. But again, just to reiterate what the mayor said, this is about community. This is about our young people in the back. And by the way, that's the future of our city, and they are future Park District employees. Who's going to work for the Park District? I already got them all signed up, but thank you guys for being here. Again, this just honored as a woman to know that there are 71 parks in the Chicago Park District named after women, and what an honor it is to have this park named after such a courageous and great woman. But it's when you visit parks such as this, the parks are rooted in stories about heroes and sheroes that really make our city great. And so I encourage communities to take advantage and walk through your beautiful parks. They belong to you. And to look up whose names are on these parks and look them up. They are part of our history, as the mayor said. And as a poet and writer, Gertrude Kolmar is recognized as one of the most important poets of our time in German literature. And so in recognizing and renaming this park from what used to be a town, the name of Kolmar transcends to a wonderful woman in our history. In the Chicago Park District is honored to work with the community, and thank you. It was one of the strongest, I don't remember how many residents came forward and said, this is what we want. And as the mayor said, our job is to listen to you and to work with you to make parks part of your community and honor your wishes. And so in addition to the renaming, as Maria said earlier, we have planted the American linden tree in her honor. And the American linden tree, which is right behind us, is a small tree. It's going to grow. Blooms white flowers in the summer, and its heart-shaped leaves turn golden in the fall. So when it matures, it will offer shade to the patrons, and I encourage the youth to read the poetry under the tree and learn more about this wonderful, wonderful woman who we are here to honor. And so now, without any further ado, I just want to say that also, and we in Chicago are actually celebrating the year of healing and just looking at the past of Gertrude Kolmar and what she went through. It's just another moment of reflection that as things happen in time and how we look at tragedy that turns into change in history and successes for cities and towns and communities just like this, that we in this year of healing think about this as an example of how we transgress and move on and prosper in the future. So for all of those of you who are here, thank you for being great partners to the Chicago Park District, and I invite you to continue to be our partners as we make parks great throughout all of the 77 communities. And then now, without any further ado, it's really my pleasure to bring to you the family member of Gertrude Kolmar, who is visiting us from very far away. So Paul Gosigner, is that correct? No, I did that wrong. Okay, Paul. We're just going to call him Paul. Paul, come up and say a few words, and thank you for your friendship and for being here with us. Thank you.
Hey, Chodzizna.
Say that louder.
Chodzizna? That's the Australian pronunciation of it. Firstly, Mayor Lightfoot, thank you. To all other distinguished guests, I'm not going to name them, the Chicago Park District Board, and I've got to mention Sarah, who put up with me a lot, organising middle of the night Zoom calls and everything. And to the people on my right, Mary, Daniel, Jacob, who couldn't be here, more Daniels, or Dan and Mark, thank you for all your efforts. And thank you, all of you, for the opportunity to be able to speak here today at this very important event, obviously not just for our family, but for the whole community. To be remiss of me to not mention Ariel, who is, see, they clap. Ariel's first article on this, I think about 20 months ago, a relative of mine in Berlin read it and forwarded it to me. And I think without that original article, it probably would have happened and nobody would have known about it. So it's special, and Ariel has since become a friend. So thank you. Ariel's article reached out to many facets, and I did want to mention that I actually met a new relative this morning, thanks to the article. A distant relative, but certainly a relative. Toby, are you somewhere here? There he is. Toby drove up from, help me? Lafayette. This morning, and we met for the first time, and he's here. Toby is related through we'd call them our great-grandmothers, which again is amazing. He didn't know I existed, and I didn't know he existed. I think I have been introduced, but to make it clear, my name's Paul Chodzizna. Not what you came out with, but that's okay.
I'm so sorry.
And I'm the great-nephew of Gertrude Chodzizna, who's, a lot of people don't realise Gertrude is Gertrude Chodzizna. Her literary name was Gertrude Kolmar. I won't go into that because that will take too long. But I'm here representing all my family, past and present, and extremely proud and honoured to be a Chodzizna. I want to have special mention to Sabina, who is Gertrude's niece, and my second cousin, who couldn't be at this event, as she lives in Brazil, along with my brother Simon and my sister Thea and all our children. Sabina did send me a message which reads as follows. She is very happy that the park will be named after Gertrude, but she would like to state that she not only be remembered as a victim of the Holocaust, but also as one of the great German poets of the 20th century. Unquote. To tell the story of Gertrude and the family would take a lot longer than the few minutes I have, so I'll be as brief as I can, but I do want to spend some time talking about it. Also, Gertrude was always referred to in the family as Trudy, within the family, so I'll continue with that tradition. The following are several paragraphs extracted from a presentation I attended at the Australian National University earlier this month, presented by a historian called Seamus Spark, who has recently been studying our family. And I'll read the next few paragraphs which I stole from him with his permission. Chodzizna is a rare surname. Before the Second World War, it was uncommon. After the war, it was all but unknown. A legacy of both the Holocaust and the mass displacement of European Jewry before and during the war. But never has the name disappeared. It lives on through myself, my siblings, and our children. To the best of my knowledge, we're the only Chodziznas in the world. In suburban Melbourne, Australia, the long story of European families continues. Gertrude remained in Germany to care for her ageing father, my great-grandfather, even afforded with the opportunity to leave many times, She sacrificed her own life to be with him until the end. Gertrude's first collections were published in 1917 when she was 22. Her first cousin, Walter Benjamin, helped her publish more poems in 1928, and further collections followed, though not until after 1936 did her work begin to attract a following and critical praise. Even then, the following was small and the praise muted, her work not widely known beyond Jewish literacy circles. Success came much later. In the decades after the war, her work found new and appreciative audiences. The scholar Jacob Picard thought her as one of Germany's most, I slipped there, didn't I? Germany's most distinguished poets, and saluted her as the greatest lyrical poetess of Jewish descent who had ever lived. Of these triumphs, Trudy never knew. She was murdered in Auschwitz in early 1943, previously having resisted all entreaties to leave Germany. Trudy had stayed in Germany to be with her elderly father, Ludwig. He was deported in 1942 and died in February 1943. Part of the genius and power of Trudy's poetry is its I can't even say it, help me. Immediacy. She wrote, thank you, they're very helpful. She wrote of the many ways in which fascism was consuming Germany, eroding every facet of society from the ground to the mundane. Often her touch is gentle, the message subtle. One loss she felt especially keenly was that of the countryside living, taken from her when she was forced to move town. Nature and animals were two of her passions, and important inspirations for her works. I suspect that for Trudy, being wrenched from the countryside she loved was as confronting as the development as being forced into hard labour. So how fitting, some 80 years later, that this park be dedicated to Trudy. She was a very humble person, and having a dedication to her would most likely not sit comfortably with her. Trudy was a prolific correspondent, especially to her sister Hilda, the youngest of the Chodziesna children, and the sibling to whom she was closest. As with Trudy's poetry, charismatic of her correspondence is subtle, a superficial and not eyewitness accounts to terror. Nor could Trudy have openly described Nazi violence or outrages. Her correspondences were outside Germany. Hilda in Switzerland, George and Margot in Australia, and her words were read by censors. And yet, there is a terror in her letters. They devastate by what she hints at and leaves unsaid. Collected, her correspondence lays bare what the Chodziesna family lost. There is a special photo taken of my family in 1937. A mere 6 years later, half of my family in that photo were gone, and others were spread across 3 continents. My grandfather certainly never spoke to us of the war, of his own experiences, or of his sister Gertrude Kolmar. My father was also very guarded about his experiences and our family history, although I have vague recollections of knowing that my great-aunt was a poet and she was murdered at Auschwitz. We also remember that there were many books, mainly written in German, containing her works and her life story stacked neatly on my father's bookshelves. Like Chodziesnas before him, my father Ben was quite an unassuming, a person who avoided attention. And yet, as his father and aunt had done, Dad made sure that the Chodziesna story endured. With the Jewish Museum in Australia, he deposited an array of papers and images that document his family's history, and other documents were entrusted to me. Those precious records are now a permanent collection of the State Library of New South Wales. Dad wrote a clear and succinct account of his parents' lives to complement these primary resources. In writing that piece, he added another chapter to his family's story of injustice and survival, another source for historians to follow. Reading that account, it is evident that Dad mentions himself only when necessary, when his presence aids understanding. My father passed away in September 2018, but was determined to acknowledge, even celebrate, the fact of his family's survival. I wonder if what mattered more to him was recording the details of the family history was to document the injustice, to not let the bastards get away with it. Trudy and the entire Chodziesna family has stood divided in the face of injustice and tragedy, and it was Dad's duty as a Chodziesna to follow him. Now that duty falls to myself and my siblings to ensure that we never forget what transpired and hope through education and awareness it can be avoided in the future. In closing, I again want to thank everyone involved in this project. A lot of people have said, why Chicago? And I think because is the answer, because they tried. Thank you. You can do the mystic.
Next, we'd like to introduce Senator Sarah Feigenholtz to speak.
This is hard. This is very hard. I am a young woman who grew up on the northwest side of Chicago, about a mile east of here, in Albany Park, Hollywood Park. I'm a Hollywood Park girl. And so I just want to say thank you to the folks in this community who, a community I grew up in and that I believe I understand very well, who are not afraid to look history in the eye, look at what's going on in the world today, and realize that when courageous people fly 24 hours, how long was that flight?
A bit longer.
Yeah, 24 hours. I just got back from that area also, and it's a long flight. How important it is for us to tell our stories. And Paul, when I listened to what you said about your father and, not letting the bastards get away with it, and like making sure that what your family went through and what Jews from Europe went through was chronicled, and that it is constantly a reminder that if we don't look all of this history in the eye, it will happen again. I wish that the students from Belding and Schurz were still here. I think the mayor and the superintendent, Escareño, also talked about how they're our future. Not only will they be employees of the Chicago Park District, but we're also counting on them to be upstanders and to not be bystanders. And when a kid in their class gets bullied, when someone is called a name that we no longer want to have in our vocabulary, when there is hatred and prejudice publicly displayed, that people stand up and say, I'm sorry, that's inappropriate. We're all part of the human family. And that is what we have to do. There's a couple of people in the audience who I want to recognize. One is my sister colleague in the House who represents this district, Representative Lindsay LaPointe, who I love. Tico Valle, who I've known as the person who runs the Center on Halsted, which is the heart and soul of the LGBTQI community, for how many years? No numbers. Tico is an amazing human being who keeps the wheels running on an incredible community center in Lakeview that I invite you all to visit if you haven't been there, on Waveland and Halsted. I live there sort of a lot. So, but I also want to acknowledge somebody who I went to Hebrew high school with, who, stand up, Allison Sloven, who I think we were both on the cheerleading squad, senior varsity. There are pictures. But we must see that. But, one of the things that we grew up believing is that we have got to tikkun olam. We have to repair the world. And part of what that encompasses is, as difficult as it is to look hatred in the eye, to look history, a very painful history that, as Paul described, many of our relatives couldn't and wouldn't talk about the Holocaust. They were so traumatized, so rocked by this experience. And that it might happen again, and that it could happen again, that we didn't hear about it for a long time. They wouldn't talk, our families would not talk about it. That's how traumatic it was. But Allison is the person who runs the Chicago Simon Wiesenthal Center. And the way she repairs the world is she has put together the Mobile Museum of Tolerance, which is a very large bus that has been to how many schools in the state of Illinois? Couple hundred, so successful that right. And that's with a second bus. Not yet. Right. And yeah. Call me on that later, okay? So two mobile museum buses that I was probably fortunate enough to be invited the first time the bus came to my Senate district. And it was, the most amazing thing about it was watching the children respond and react to this, and how to recognize bullying, and how, again, to be upstanders, not bystanders, when people are discriminated against and bullied. And I encourage anybody in this community to remember to get on the waiting list and get Belding School and Schurz High School and all the schools in this community an opportunity to see what this bus can offer, because it is an investment that the state of Illinois has made. In Illinois, we have the Holocaust and Genocide Commission, where we look at the atrocities that have occurred around the world and are still occurring, and we are fighting it tooth and nail with age-appropriate historical and educational tools. I want to again thank the mayor for coming here. I know how the mayor is wired. I was not surprised at all that she was going to show up here today, because this is a woman who also understands and feels what it's like, and has been fighting discrimination as long as she's been on Earth. So again, I want to thank everyone, and the community especially, for Daniel Eagleweiss, who forgot to mention that he was my former chief of staff. Former chief of staff. He sort of bossed me around, actually, which was fine. But again, for bringing this to my attention and sort of enlightening the community about this. And I'm just delighted that our youth, and this is our future, is very tuned in to what we have to do to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It is truly an honor and a privilege to work with this group of people to be here today. Our group is only a small part of Chicago. Chicago is known by many names: the city of broad shoulders, the city that works, and today is a fine example of that. Just in the city of Chicago, we have the world. You can see by neighborhoods, through the different streets, what this community, what Chicago represents. And I am very proud to say that I've born in Chicago, a community that welcomes all and gives opportunity that cannot be equaled anywhere else in the world. It is truly a wonderful place. Now, as I read this, I'd like you to pay attention. As many things occur in the world right now, there's much hate, much anger, but you must realize the truth is, with all the difference that exists, we have much more in common. And let this be an example of the pain that she evokes in these words. But yet, if you listen deeply, it is a pain that transforms to joy. The poetess, by Gertrude Kolmar. You hold me now completely in your hands. My heart beats like a frightened little bird's. Against your palm, take heed. You do not think. A person lives with the page you thumb. To you, this book is paper, cloth, and ink, some binding, thread and glue, and thus is dumb, and cannot touch you, though the gaze be great, that seeks you from the printed marks inside, and is an object with an object's faith. And yet, it has been veiled like a bride, adorned with gems, made ready to be loved, who ask you bashfully to change your mind, to wake yourself and feel and to be moved. But still, she trembles, whispering to the wind, "This shall not be," and smiles as if she knew. Yet she must hope. A woman always tries. Her very life is but a single you. With her black flowers and painted eyes, with silver chains and silks of spangled blue, she knew more beauty when a child and free, but now forgets the better words she knew. A man is so much cleverer than we, conversing with himself of truth and lie, of death and spring and ironwork and time. But I say you, and always you and I. This book is but a girl's dress in rhyme, which can be rich and red, or poor and pale, which may be wrinkled but with gentle hands, and only may be torn by loving nails. So then, to tell my story, here I stand. The dress's tint, though bleached in bitter lie, has not all washed away. It still is real. I call then with a thin, ethereal cry. You hear me speak, but do you hear me feel? The Poetess by Gertrude Kolmar.
My name is Dan Pukazelski. It's an honor to be here with everyone, our lovely committee, the mayor, the elected officials. Gertrude Kolmar wrote in German. Her family roots were in Poland. She was murdered because she was Jewish. She was murdered like millions of others in Auschwitz, a German concentration camp outside of Krakow, Poland. Very much like my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather's 3 sons, my grandfather, his 2 brothers, were all among the earliest inmates. We can't do anything about the past. What we can do is, as the fine senator said, tikkun olam, heal the world. And we can do that by taking action, every one of us. That's what the message is that all of us want you to take today. Be the change you wish to see in the world. And in an age where hate, controversy so easily draws everyone's eyeballs, to instead tune that out, because hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And so with that way, her legacy, the legacy of so many others, will survive. Thank you, and without further ado, Rabbi, I'd ask you for a closing prayer.
So I'll say that this is an incredible time for us to be gathered to remember and to really pay homage to an extraordinary poet and human being and family member. And so today, as we do so, we do this on a day where we are marking the fall equinox, the time in which we need to be looking for, as these nights grow longer, as these days are darker, that we have to look to the place where we can still find light. And so today, as we remember Gertrude Kolmar, we are finding a way to look toward light. And we're doing so in a time that is potent for the Jewish people, because this is just before our High Holy Day season, just before starting a new Jewish year. So we do this at a time where we do what's called teshuvah, or to be able, sometimes people translate it as repent, but really it comes from the word shuv, to turn. And so what we do is we say this is the time to turn toward the best within ourselves and to bring that out into the world, to turn to places that are sources of light and bring those out into the world, to look at the best that's in our city and to be able to say, let's build on that together. So it's in that way that I invite the people who have organized this event to please stand here, our incredible civic leaders and family members to please stand too, Tico and Anna, if you would, and the incredible reporter who made this all happen. If you could all stand here with us. I invite you now to reach out to the person next to you. Come on up here, please. And draw a little closer. Draw so close to the people next to you that you could reach out a hand. Oh, I love that. Thank you. To reach out your hand next to the person that's next to you. Oh, or reach your arms around. How nice. In that way, understanding that we do this together. And so we pray, O God, source of inspiration, source of joy, demander of memory, you call us today to remember Gertrude Kolmar, to say that she still continues to inspire us, the way that she was able to bring out her light into the world, no matter the darkness that surrounded her. May we know that inside us, we each contain divine light. Let us shine that into the world. Remind us that we can only do this with people around us, good people who want change, who want repair, who believe in tikkun olam, in repair of the world, and then roll up their sleeves and do it with others. May we understand in this time of year, this time of teshuvah, this time of turning, that it is time for us to turn, to realize that there is beauty inside us, beauty in this world, beauty in these parks, beauty in the youthful future, and that we support that we do everything within our power to bring that out into the world in the memory of Gertrude Kolmar. And to that we say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all
Ladies
for
and
joining
gentlemen, I
us.
think you all deserve an applause for
Yes.
yourself.
Thank you
being
for
part of
joining
this
us.
day and this ceremony. So thank you very much. Dan, I think Dan and Mary would also like to thank you, and
Thank you.
Daniel and all of us here.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you for
for
coming
joining.
and sharing this moment with us.
And don't forget to tie a ribbon, yellow ribbon, along the park in commemoration of this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.